practicing, through building new neural pathways, we can give a little boost and help to the 50% if we didn't get all the good stuff. And then she also shows that only about 10% of this total pie is your demographics. So where you're living, where you're working, your current age, things like that. So what I think is interesting about that is we're going to debunk some of these myths we have around happiness. So the first myth I'm debunking is that you can control more than you think. I think that 40% was probably startling for some of you. And on the contrary, the only 10% for the demographics might have been startling as well. So you can control more than you think. The second myth that we've debunked is that demographics don't matter as much as you think. The third myth we've debunked is that it takes effort and practice. We're not wired with negativity, but we are wired with a negative bias. So we go to the negative quicker. We can stay there longer. You really do have to make a choice to practice positivity. It's kind of like when you go to the gym, you can't just look at your workout routine, read it, and say, I'm good. You actually have to practice it. So just reading the books wasn't enough, right? I have to actually practice these things. And then the fourth myth we're debunking is don't believe everything your mind says. Your mind is lying to you. Challenge your thinking, question, get in there and get curious about things. And one of the people that I really enjoy, and she's actually the one who's really sort of put these myths into our mind, is Dr. Laurie Santos. And she is the professor of psychology at Yale. Some of you may be familiar with her name because she's got an amazing podcast on positivity called The Happiness Lab. So if any of you are like me and you like to put in your earbuds and go for a walk on your lunch break, I highly encourage you to listen to The Happiness Lab on one of your walks. You won't be disappointed. Dr. Laurie Santos also has a course on Coursera called The Science of Wellbeing. And even at an Ivy League like Yale, her course on happiness is one of the highest attended courses each year. So I think that's telling that even when you get to some place like Yale, you still have to think about, what am I grateful for? What do I have here that I can be thankful for? How can I practice positivity? And I'm going to be throwing out a bunch of names and resources today. And if it's too many to keep track of, you can always email me offline, and I'm happy to share these resources with you as well. But another term that's come onto the forefront is prospection. So this term was coined in 2007 by Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson. And Daniel Gilbert may be a familiar name to some of you. He wrote the book Stumbling on Happiness, and he's a professor of psychology at Harvard. And he defines prospection as the act of looking forward in time or considering the future. And in his studies, he says this is what sets humans apart from anyone else, is our ability for mental simulation, for prediction, for imagining the future and forecasting. And the other part that we maybe don't always think about when we think of prospection is what's called your DMN, your default mode network. So that's your mental downtime when your mind wanders. And this is often when we get inspiration, whether that's out on a walk, whether that's in the shower, whether that's driving in the car. You go into your default mode network, and often this is where prospection really gives us an advantage. We can imagine things, we get new ideas, we gain creativity. So if you're fascinated by this, I highly recommend Daniel Gilbert's book, Stumbling on Happiness. So thinking about prospection, one of the things that can happen with this, remember, even a good thing, if we overdo it, it can be detrimental for us. You have the term impact bias. And impact bias is when we consider the future, we make mistakes. So this can be both good and bad. It depends. So the first way that this shows up is that we often overestimate how long the good will last. So they've done studies with people who've won the lottery, and they'll test their happiness before they find out, and then they test their happiness when they found out they won the lottery. And of course, there's a spike. But when they revisit these folks 6 months down the road, they've actually come back to the baseline before they had found out the good news. This is also working on the other side, which is that we overestimate the intensity that pain will last or that the pain will be. So bad things won't be as bad as we think. And if you are into podcasts, here's another one that I think is worth listening to. It's A Slight Change of Plans by Maya Shankar. She's a cognitive scientist, and I believe she was an advisor in the Obama administration. Not too long ago, she interviewed someone on her podcast, and this person, his name was Scott, and for 10 years, he worked extremely hard to expand his lifespan. He was really afraid of being sick or having a really poor health analysis. And so he was eating vegan, he was doing intermittent fasting, he was having turmeric on everything, right? He was really, really trying to be as healthy as he could. And then during the pandemic, he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And this is devastating. I mean, we wouldn't wish this for anyone. But he survived, and he was recently interviewed by Maya, and he said that he has the same level of happiness now that he did before he got his diagnosis. And he said that if he had known that he could bounce back to this level of happiness, he wouldn't have feared it so much to begin with. So I think that's very interesting. And think about how that might apply to different situations in your life. But being aware that, of course, we're going to have spikes and we're going to have valleys. But really, we come back to this sort of baseline threshold of happiness. And if we don't like where that threshold is resting, we can practice more positivity to increase it. So we talk about prospection, we talk about impact bias. Now we're going to bring in this term hedonic adaptation. So some of you may be familiar with the term hedonism or hedonic, and it really, Aristotle was someone who first sort of identified these two feelings. So he talks about hedonic pleasure, which is that positive effect, that sort of immediate pleasure we get from doing things. It doesn't always have to be, sketchy things. We can get hedonic pleasure from many different things. He contrasts that with eudaimonic, which is more meaning in life, reason and morality. And as Martin Seligman calls it, when we look for eudaimonic pleasure, it's the good life. And so when we're in that sort of hedonic adaptation, we always think the grass is greener on the other side, right? Or if the goalpost is happiness, we just keep pushing the goalpost further back because we get one thing and then it's okay for a little bit and then we want the next thing and then we want the next thing. So how do we start with happiness as opposed to constantly just looking for it and changing the goalpost? So with hedonic adaptation, it's that I'll be happy when I get the new job. I'll be happy when I get a raise. I'll be happy when I get the new car or the bigger TV. But we're proving that we return to a stable level of happiness despite major positive and negative events. And also that expectations and desires rise in tandem. And unfortunately, I hate to break it to you, but there is no such thing as eternal happiness. We have to keep practicing it and creating it each day. And this brings us to well-being. And this is where one of my sort of favorite fathers of positive psychology comes into the mix. So I mentioned his name earlier, Martin Seligman. He's still with us. He teaches at the University of Pennsylvania. He has created the Master of Applied Positive Psychology degree there. He's written a number of books, one of them being Authentic Happiness. He actually, on his website, he has a happiness indicator, I think, where you answer just a few questions and it will tell you where your happiness level is. So if you're curious, you can go and do that after this presentation. But he was fascinated with thinking about well-being, and he really wanted to study what is well-being. And so he sent out, what is well-being? What makes up well-being? And he got a staggering 99 self-published measures of well-being, which had actually, I think, like 196 different components. And that's just not manageable. But through working with others and through his research, he basically found there's these 5 sort of buckets that make up well-being. And it's an acronym. We love acronyms. So PERMA. The P stands for positive emotions, hugely important in our well-being. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. The E is for engagement. Having that engagement, using discretionary effort, that effort that you choose how and when to use it. Having positive relationships, the power of relationship and connection, and the depth of those relationships in our life. The M is for meaning. And Seligman would say, not just meaning, also mattering, which it's a subtle difference, but it is a difference to think, do I have meaning in my work or meaning in my life? Also, is what I'm doing, does it matter? And then the 5th component, A, is for accomplishment. Of course, we can understand that, right? Feeling like we're making a difference, that we're accomplishing something, that we're moving forward or making progress is very important in our well-being. And he also would say that there are some who would like to add a 6th, which is H for health. And I have no problem with that. I would completely agree that our health affects our well-being. And I would say that all 5 of these also affect our health. So that there's an interesting relationship there. To go back to Martin Seligman, he was contacted, I think this was back in the early 2000s, when we were having soldiers come back with PTSD. And the military department contacted him and said, can you help us? And so he created this program, which he called Comprehensive Soldier Fitness. And they were teaching soldiers coping skills. So helping them to dispute catastrophic thoughts that they've had, or things that they remember or relive, putting bad events into perspective, and then turning that into active, constructive responding, practicing gratitude, building strengths, having these sort of positive psychology interventions is what they were called. But really, they're activities or exercises that the soldiers could practice that would prevent them from having more anxiety or stress. It reduced depression and it increased their well-being. And these studies are documented if you're interested. It also coined the term post-traumatic growth that came out of these studies that Seligman was involved in. And I would say that the reason why I call him sort of the father of psychology or positive psychology is in the 90s, when he was the president of the American Psychological Association, he said, psychology is half-baked. We're studying what makes people sick. And that is important. But I want to know what makes people thrive. So 15% of people aren't surviving well, but 85% are. So what are they doing? And most especially, he was interested in those outliers, those people that really were flourishing and thriving. All right, so kind of bouncing into different places here. Another resource that might be really fun for some of you is Sean Akers' book, The Happiness Advantage. He's got probably one of the most watched TED Talks out there where he talks about his book and he introduces the happiness challenge. So if any of you are out there interested in a happiness challenge or interested in making some progress with that 40%, I highly recommend this. So the trick is you have to do all 5 of these things for 21 days in a row. And actually, the research around building habits or breaking a habit and creating a new habit shows that it can take more like 30 to 90 days to build a habit. So we're not saying that you're just going to have the habit of being happy after 21 days, but these 21 days give you a definite boost. So the first thing that you practice is 3 gratitudes. Each day, pause and think about 3 new things you're grateful for. And you can write those down, keep a little journal. If you just like to say things or imagine them in your mind, that's fine as well. The second thing is journaling. This is probably the hardest thing for me, but it brings some of the best results. And his journaling is very specific. So what he asks you to do is to think of a positive experience you've had within the last 24 hours, and then journal about that for maybe 2 to 3 minutes, to do that each day. The third thing is exercise, moving our body. It's so important, and to be in touch with how our body's feeling. So he encourages exercising for 10 minutes a day. If some of you are way past that, great. This won't be hard for you at all. For some of us, that might be a challenge. Like we actually have to get up and do something and practice something. If you can't get in 10 minutes, it's not a failure. Your exercise could be 20 jumping jacks, 10 push-ups, whatever it is, taking time each day to do something that moves your body. The fourth thing is meditation. And I know that there are many different ways and schools of training for meditation. What Sean Aker encourages is that just for 2 days, you simply sit in a comfortable position and be in touch with your breath, breathing in and out. And if your thoughts wander, that's okay. Bring them back and just breathe. And then the fifth thing is to practice a random act of kindness. And he even really scripts this for you if you like that. He says that the first thing you do each day for 21 days is send an email to praise or thank someone that you know. And so I did this with a team a few years ago, and the manager of the team wanted everyone to get their pre-happiness challenge sort of happiness assessment. So we all took the assessment and we got a number, and it was between 1 and 100. And then we did the happiness challenge together for 21 days. And then we all took the happiness assessment again at the end of those 21 days. And most everyone saw some positive movement. Even me, who I'm wired pretty positively, and I even found some, my points went up a bit. But there was one person on the team who increased her score from 35 to 75. I mean, it was very noticeable. And so we all were curious, what did you do? What did you notice? What's changed? And the things that she was willing to share, number one, at the end of the day, she and her husband started to develop a routine of going on a walk. And while they were on their walk, they talked about their 3 gratitudes, what went well that day and why. And then when they got back, they would just jot that down. And they would say a prayer together before they went to bed. And so she noticed that just by doing that, number one, it improved their relationship. Number two, they started to look for the good things in the day. They both had jobs that were very stressful and dealt with people that aren't in a happy place, without giving too much away. So it was not always easy to find good things in the day. But she said that her mind was starting to look forward to those things just because of practicing these 5 activities. So if you're interested in doing a challenge, I'm more than happy to help kick it off for you. I may not necessarily email you every day of the 21 days, but I'd be more than happy to be a positive boost or inspiration if it's something that you would like to try. So feel free to email me privately, and I'm happy to help with that. I feel like I'm talking an awful lot. I want to take a moment. Are there any comments, any questions, Tim, that I can answer at this point?
I don't see anything in the chat at this point, Lisa.
Okay. Hopefully you're all just madly taking notes of getting inspired. I'm not putting you to sleep. All right. So what we're going to start doing now is, and I do need definite interaction and participation from you for these next few slides. So as some of you may remember, I think, my goodness, it's probably been over a year or so ago, you were getting monthly emails from the Oregon Positivity Project. That was a project that I was the lead on, and it has since sunsetted, so it's no longer being actively updated. But when we started the project, it really was to put a spotlight on different things we can practice to increase positivity, and how profoundly the way we feel affects how we perform. So there was a definite business case for doing this project as well. And the first part of the project that we did was focusing on kindness, and most specifically practicing acts of kindness. And so what I'd like us all to do together is I would like you to just think about, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just think to yourself, and then I'm going to ask for some volunteers. Think about, in the last 24 hours, what's an act of kindness that you've done for someone, or that someone has done for you, or maybe it's even something you observe. So be thinking about that for the next 30 seconds, and then I'm going to ask for a couple people to share an act of kindness you did, you observed, or was done to you. All right. Can I get someone who would like to raise their hand or even just unmute and share?
I
Yes,
can.
April. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, I was on my way to the East Gleason ODHS office yesterday, and we all know how hot it was. But I was just it just made me grin. This guy from 3 lanes over in a FedEx truck hops out of his truck with a bottle of water and gave it to the gentleman on the side of the road. And he was overjoyed with getting water. And I just thought that was so cool.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you, April. Thank you. Murray, I think you had your hand up, or I heard you speak.
Yes, hi. My car has a check engine message right now, so it's in my driveway and not functioning. And a group were meeting to go to a film last night, and so a friend volunteered to come pick me up and take me there so I could get to the film. And that was really something that stood out to me because he had to drive way out of his way to do that.
That's awesome. Well, I hope your car is okay. It's not good to have check engine light in this kind of heat, and good luck. Anyone else?
I can go.
Okay, please.
Hi, I'm Karen. So we have a friend, and this was when the weather was really hot, the 100-degree weather, and he was on Facebook and he was listening to his friends, and he has a friend who broke their leg. And so they were in the house and their air conditioning broke. They had a window unit. And so he couldn't really go out and do a whole lot. And so our friend ordered him an air conditioner, a window unit, a small unit for their apartment, and had it delivered to him.
Wow,
And I was in awe of that. So I thought that was really cool.
that's amazing. Thanks for sharing. And I think, Tiffany, I saw your hand.
Hi. I try to do this when I get inspired by something. I'm like, okay, take action. And it's something that takes 2 minutes. I did it this morning as I was just had a break, and I was kind of thinking through things, and a few people popped in my head, and I thought, I'm going to reach out right now. I got a minute or two, and just tell them I'm thinking about them and I love them. And I might either say something, if I know they're having a hard time, there's a little extra message for each person. But I was really glad that I took it. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to do, is pay attention to when I'm inspired to do something that might impact someone positively. So
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Tiffany. And we'll take one more. Donna, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just want to say my son took me to the beach yesterday afternoon to have dinner at the beach, just because I was so hot, and he knew Needed it. And it was his day off work, so I was very happy with him and appreciated his kindness. The dog
Yes.
went too, and she was very happy.
Oh, very good. Excellent. Thank you all for sharing. I would love to hear from every one of you, but for sake of time, we're going to go to the next one. But I just want to circle back to a theme that I heard from all of you, and Tiffany, you even brought this up. There's a reciprocity, or the reciprocal nature with kindness. It not only is beneficial for the person who receives it, but the person who experiences it or gives it, there's also that boost of positivity that we feel at the same time. So I appreciate your examples and how it highlighted that. Thank you. Let's go to number 2. So the second area that we focused on in the project was expressing gratitude, giving recognition, saying thank you, even praise, if you want to use those words as well. And this was especially interesting for me because the other hat I wear in the CHRO is employee engagement. And one of the drivers of employee engagement is recognition and praise. And I was very aware of the research that mathematician Marcel Lasada and positive psychologist Barbara Fredrickson did around studying teams and looking at, is there sort of a secret ratio or an obvious ratio of positive to negative comments that happen that make a team successful. And so they studied numbers of teams. And what their research found is that it's sort of 3 to 1. So if you want a mathematical ratio, it'd be like 3 to 1, 3 positive comments or statements to 1 negative. And they found that in some of the highest performing teams they studied, that ratio was closer to 6 to 1. Now, I'm not saying that we just go and express a bunch of gratitude and we're good, right? It may not be genuine. It may not even be warranted. But how do we start to look for the good things that are happening and take time to recognize those? And this brings in another name dropping opportunity, which is around appreciative inquiry. So we think about what we appreciate appreciates. And so how do we spend more time looking for what's working? It's not avoiding the problems, but the best way to figure out how to solve the problem is probably to figure out where are the strengths that we have here and how are we going to use those to manage around where we've got a struggle or a challenge. So expressing gratitude is important on so many different levels. So what I'd like for you all to do now is we'll take about 30 seconds again. And this again is just for you, your own awareness or moment of reflection, to write down 3 things that have gone well today and why you think they went well. So it's not just, I'm grateful for lunch. It's, I'm thankful for my lunch because I had the most delicious salad with fresh vegetables, right? Let's get a little deeper than just one thing. So take 30 seconds and write down what went well today or what you're thankful for today and why. Go ahead. All right. Well, for some of you, you've already started one of the steps of the 21-day challenge. Is there anyone that would like to share something that went well today and why?
I'll go.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vicki.
So yesterday, my dog was really, really sick. She ate something that, you know, puppies do that. And I was just so grateful that she is feeling better. She's back to her old self and eating again and just running around and being happy. It was just so stressful, she just kept getting sick and wasn't eating. And it was so hot yesterday. So I was just so nervous. And today she's so much better. So I'm so grateful for that.
So am I. Thank you for sharing that good news.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share something that's gone well, we'll say in the last 24 hours, and why? Or that you're grateful for and why?
This is Donna, but I don't know if you've heard of these, but they're called body scans. They're like a mindful practice, and you basically start with your toes and you do deep breathing and stuff. And so I was feeling like really anxious earlier, and so then I clicked onto that guided body scan, and it really made such a huge difference to make the rest of the day go so much better.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful. I'm going to look into that. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Anyone else want to share or express some gratitude? Raylan. Hi, friend.
Hi, friend. I wanted to express gratitude because my husband, who is retired, he was working around the house today, and he picked a very wonderful quantity of fresh beets from the garden and did all of the cleaning and prepped them so that then I could rub them and season them and pop them into a very hot oven because we like them baked. They are amazing. You've never had a beet until you've had a baked beet. So dinner is already half made because that all happened during the lunch hour. And
Nice.
I'm grateful for good fresh food out of the garden and for my husband.
Does he have purple fingers now?
I didn't check. I always wear gloves when I'm working with beets.
Of course. Of course. Thank you for that. So you all are getting some practice of doing kindness and expressing gratitude. And it's not so easy. This isn't always a simple thing to be able to take a moment and do this. And so I think this is why they say we do need to practice these things. We make a choice and we have to do something about it to continue to experience happiness and positive emotions. So good for all of you for sticking with us and sharing. Let's go to the next one, which was a focus on creating connection. And this is so powerful. And I love that one of the sort of psychologists on the forefront of this research is someone in Oregon. He's homegrown. And his name is Dr. Robert Biswas Diener. He teaches at Portland State University, and he also has a company called Happiness I think it's Happy Acorn. Sorry, I'm gonna have to double check that now. I feel bad that I can't remember. I just know the acorn because that's so unique, and I had to ask him about that. And he says that happiness is between us, not just within us. So other people matter. I mean, maybe some of you are like, duh, but really what that means is that I'm responsible for how I show up because we co-create this happiness or what other emotion there is together. So we are responsible for one another's happiness. And I have an obligation. How I show up affects you. The great thing is when I'm better, you're better. And also when you're better, I'm better. So there's this ripple effect or reciprocity that happens with happiness. Some call it the mirror neurons, that it's like looking in a mirror. If you smile at someone for 7 seconds, they can't help but smile back at you. When my daughter was little, I played this game with her. We read a book about mirror neurons and the ripple effect. And so then we would play the game and she'd be like, Mommy, I'm not going to smile at you. I'm not going to smile at you. And about 6 seconds in, she just would, her face would just fall into a smile. And then she would try to like close her eyes and not look at me. Well, you can't have mirror neurons when you do that. But creating connection and creating relationship and co-creating this happiness together is really important. And I think some of you may be familiar with the study that they've done in Harvard. I think it's been a 70-year study, and they followed a cohort of men through their life. And what they found is that relationships were the number one indicator of longevity. And it wasn't just relationships, it was the depth of those relationships. You didn't have to have a ton of them, but the ones that you did, the depth of that connection and that caring for each other. So I thought it would be fun at this point to check in with you all as to what are some ways that you stay connected to people that matter to you, maybe even people that are long distances. We're not all close together. And also thinking about 3.5 years in a pandemic where we kind of had to social distance. What were some of the things that you did that helped you to stay connected, either in your personal life or in your work life? Would anyone like to take a moment and just share with us some of the things you did to stay connected? Yeah, Sandy.
Well, while we were in pandemic and we all lived in the Teams meeting, I would make it an intention to look for a green dot of one of the team members at DAS Procurement Services just to pop in and say hi. I called them drive-bys, even though we're not at each other's desks, so to speak, in the building. And I found that it was really good to be able to maintain the relationships because you just physically were not seeing people unless you had a meeting that you would see just crossing in the hall, to go to the break room. And so that really helped to maintain relationships.
I love that. The green dot drive-by. Thank you for sharing that. You've planted a good seed. All right, let's hear from some others of you. You help us to be better. So please, let's hear from a couple more.
Lisa, Regina posted in the chat. There have been some other back and forth in the chat that I haven't spoke up, but Regina just posted specifically for the question you're posing, and she said, set up virtual coffee breaks with team members and others in the agency.
Yeah, great. I love that. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Regina. Anything else in the chat, Tim?
Yeah, Ed actually just added his rotate my days in the office periodically so I can cross paths with staff who come in on different days than my normal.
Ah, great idea. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ed. Anything else? Okay, well, we know connection is so important, and doing things that allow for a little bit of play in the workplace is also important because we let down our guard to have a laugh with someone or to share a little about our day. And it allows for that opportunity to start forming connection. And I think that that is so important. So good for you. Have some green dot drive-bys, switch up your days in the office to see different people, do those things that matter and help to stay connected. Okay, moving on to number 4. The fourth area we focused on was really around the mindfulness, body, mind, and spirit. And we shared about the loving kindness meditation. And so if you're not familiar, I'll just walk you through it. And then it's something that you can practice on your own. So the idea around the loving kindness meditation, how I first heard about it was from a mindfulness expert, Sharon Salzberg, and that's Salzberg, in case you want to look her up. And there's 3 different parts to it, but you say the same thing each time, which is, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, and may I live with ease. And so the first part of the meditation is just to really be in tune with your own breath and yourself, and to ask that of yourself. May I be happy? May I be healthy? May I be safe? May I live with ease? The next part of the meditation is then to think of someone who you have a neutral interaction with. Maybe it's the person who pumps your gas. Maybe it's the person who does your groceries. Maybe it's the person who you pass just on the street. But something that's it's just a neutral relationship. And be able to think of them and to say, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Then the third part of this is to think of someone whom you have a loving relationship with, a dear friend, family member, partner, and be able to say, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may you live with ease. I would say that those first three aren't that hard. The last part is not so easy. And that is to think of someone with whom you have low trust, someone you have a negative relationship with, maybe even someone who you just don't think is a good person. And to be able to think about them with compassion and say, may they be happy, may they be healthy, may they be safe, and may they live with ease. So something that also comes into with loving kindness meditation is really the power of being present with our breathing. And I am not an expert by any means. I idle pretty high. I'm wound awfully tight. Anyone who knows me knows that. And to get me to sit still and to settle down is not that easy. But what I have learned from just sitting and being present with my breath is a calmness that comes over me, clarity in my mind, and it gets you out of that ego part of your brain, that below the line thinking. It gets you into accessing your executive functions, the prefrontal cortex, really being in the thought part of your brain. So I wanted to share a couple of ideas around breathing, and then I'm going to open it up for if any of you have some helpful tips around meditation or mindfulness practices that are there for you. So the first one is called box breathing. And you just think of, 4 equal sides. So it's 5, 5, 5, and 5. So you inhale for 5, you hold it for 5, you exhale for 5, and you hold it for 5. It's a great way to just calm and get present. The one, though, that I actually practice the most, and I'm going to be honest, true story, even though I've been doing this for a number of years, I get nervous. I get butterflies before presentations. And my Fitbit told me with the little heartbeat that I was at 100 beats per minute before talking to you all. And so I was like, wow, that's really fast. So I just took a moment and did this breathing, which is you inhale for 4 counts, ideally through your nose. You suspend that for 2. You exhale for 6 counts, also through your nose if you can. And then suspend that for 2 and start it again. So I encourage you to take a moment and practice some sort of breathing technique when you're feeling anxiety or emotions that maybe make your body clench, or you can feel your heartbeat faster, or you can feel the heat rushing to your face. Taking that moment for yourself to just get present and to breathe. And I'd love to hear from any of you. Is there something that you found that really helps you in your mindfulness or your meditation? What do you do to connect to your body, to connect to your thinking?
Lisa, Vicky shared one in the chat. I think many of us can probably relate, and that is prayer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Vicky.
And I have
Anyone?
one that I use that might
Yeah.
sound kind of strange, but I simply try to spend a few minutes recognizing my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because normally throughout the day and throughout my life, I try to ignore them and pretend that they don't exist and that I don't have them.
Mm-hmm.
So to
Mm-hmm.
spend a few minutes just recognizing those kind of washes them, so to speak, allow myself to sit in them for 90 seconds, and then I'm able to think more clearly once I've done that.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim, so much for sharing that. You just made me realize another name I want to drop. I think this is a great resource for anyone interested in going into this a little more deeper. The author, Susan David, I believe she's a professor of psychology at Harvard as well. Susan David has done a lot of study around emotions and emotional literacy. So having more names for our emotions than just the mad, sad, glad triangle. And I believe her book is called Emotional Agility. But she says by naming your emotion, you don't give the emotion power over you. By naming the emotion, you get power over it, because you can say, I notice I'm feeling resentment. And what is that telling me about my situation right now, or the circumstances I'm in, or what's just happened? And by being able to identify it, to sort of name it, claim it, you then have a way to work through it. So yes, that's great. I'm thrilled to hear that, and thank you for reminding me to bring that up. Anything else coming in around mindfulness or meditation?
Yeah, Lisa, you'll love what Sandy just posted in the chat. She said, I like Rosenberg's feelings wheel.
I don't know it. Okay, I have another
Oh,
one to
you
look
don't know
up.
the feelings wheel. I thought the feelings wheel was part of the Positivity Project work.
Feelings wheel. So I'm familiar with the what's it was called, the meter. What was that called? It had all these different words and then in the different quadrants, but I don't think the wheel was in there. If it was, it might have been somebody else offered it, and it didn't come from my brain. So I'm thrilled to have something to look into.
Well, Lisa, it's from Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication. And in that book, there's a feelings wheel where it helps people to identify their feeling and communicate it in a way that's nonviolent. So you don't say, you make me feel, blah, blah, blah. And so it really just helps in communicating nonviolently.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. So I wanted to share an article I read this morning, and I kept thinking, is it going to fit if I bring it into this presentation? Maybe it won't fit. Maybe I was just so inspired by the article, I just want to share it. But I think that this is actually a great time to share it. So it was in the New York Times, and they interviewed an ordained Buddhist monk. His name is Matthew Ricard. And he's also an internationally best-selling author of books about altruism, animal rights, happiness, and wisdom. And why they interviewed him is he's been called the world's happiest man. And so the journalist asked him about this, and he kind of joked. He said, that's not a title that I would really use for myself. He says, sort of, neuroscience isn't going to tell me how happy I am. But I loved something he did say. He said, I enjoy every moment of life, but of course, there are moments of extreme sadness, especially when you see so much suffering. But this should kindle your compassion. And if it kindles your compassion, you go to a stronger, healthier, more meaningful way of being. And that's what he calls happiness. It's not as if all the time you jump for joy. Happiness is more like your baseline. And I think why this came to me just now is we're talking about loving kindness meditation and compassion and love for others. And even when we're in negative emotions, to honor that and recognize it and feel the depth of it, to like understand what is this about and what's happening, and then to be able to work through that. That brings you back to that baseline. I thought that was really beautifully said. And then the other part in the article that I liked is, if you can, as much as possible, cultivate that quality of human warmth, wanting genuinely for other people to be happy. That's the best way to fulfill your own happiness. So another thing that I think about when I think of loving kindness meditation is having warmth for someone, thinking of them warmly. And maybe that's helpful to you as well. All right. So this was probably, and this is the last part of the project I'm going to talk about today. This was probably one of my favorite parts, because we made it sort of not a contest per se, but we encouraged people to submit photos of where they go when they are savoring life's joys. And so we called it the Wonder Walk. And we were getting so many great pictures from people out in nature. Oregon is just ripe with people were at the coast, people were in the forest or on trails, people were in the mountains. I mean, there's so much opportunity to find beauty here. We're so privileged. But we also saw people walking with their families or just out with their furry four-legged friends. It brightened all of our days for sure when we got these photos sent in. But to be thinking about savoring life's joys, it doesn't have to be big, huge things like a trip to Hawaii or getting a new car or whatever. The littlest things like warm beets in the oven, a fresh strawberry, a blackberry that you just pulled off of the bush, being out in the flowers, smelling fresh rain after it's just fallen. So I would love for you all to take just 30 seconds and think about what is something that has happened previously that you've savored recently. So savoring happens in the past. Just write that down. Think about something that you're savoring right now, something that you've savored in the present. And then the third part is, what is coming up? What is something that you're savoring that's going to happen? So take 30 seconds and just write those three things down. All right. And if you'd like to put this in the chat, this might be easier, and then Tim can just read them off to me. But I would love to hear from you. Where do you go to savor life's joys? Where do you take your Wonder Walk? So Tim, go ahead. If you see any entries, read them off.
Sure. For me, it's the coast and just about any forest in Oregon. And let's see, in the trees along a river, sandy dittoed. Someone else, my neighborhood, Minto Brown Park, Roads End, north of Lincoln City.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I know that.
Don't think I've been there. I might have to visit that one.
I think that's the spot where you're up high. You can see the beach, Lincoln City, and then is it Devil's Lake? Yeah, no. Anyway, there's three really cool things you see from the vantage point.
Oh, cool. Also Silver Falls Park, my backyard. Someone else says.
Great. There's so much research done about the importance of being in nature and how that affects our mental health, our physical health, our positivity. But they've even had research shown that even if you're not outside, but like for me right now, I'm looking to my left And I have a hanging banner, I guess you'd call it, of a picture I took when I was on Oahu and we were on this hike, and I just happened to look over and it was just filled with the sun shining through bamboo trees. And so I snapped this picture. I'm not a very good photographer, but this picture, it couldn't have gone bad. And then I had it put into a banner. And this research shows that even just looking at a picture of nature or of something that's green, a plant or whatever, that it has that same kind of effect on you. So I encourage all of you, even if you don't have time to go out for your Wonder Walk, bring it into your office, put it in your surroundings, get a plant or get a picture of a plant, something that helps you to keep that connection to nature. All right, so the final closing thought I wanted to leave you with, again, I love sharing this story because it's local here in Oregon. The person who found this company, don'tgiveupsigns.com, her name is Amy Wolf, and she's from Newberg, Oregon. And she started her company quite a while ago. I think it was back in probably 2008, because when I read the article, it was referring to something in 2013, and she had already been doing it for a few years. So anyway, that doesn't matter. The gist of it is that her daughter's high school had a sudden amount of suicides. I think there had been like 4 suicides in the past few months. And it was especially close to her heart because she had lost her own brother to suicide. And she shared in the article just having this sense of, I have to do something. I have to do something that might make a difference for someone. And so she had a friend who made street signs or yard signs. And so she just said, hey, could you make me some signs? And he said, sure. And so she had the signs, and she would just knock on some of the doors in her neighborhood in Newberg and say, hey, is it okay if I put this sign out here? And mostly she was met with, welcome. Yes, please. Absolutely. And in fact, around a week or so, she was starting to get phone calls. Are you the one that's doing the signs? How can I get some of those signs? So it was at that point that she partnered with this sign person, and they said, okay, we don't want to make any money. We just want to be able to do these at cost. And I think at the time the article was written, you could get, was it 10 signs for $75? My brain is not doing well right now, but it wasn't a huge amount of money. And so people were getting these signs and they were putting them all around, and she was starting to see them in other neighborhoods in other cities. And when she was interviewed and wrote the article, they had started the nonprofit don'tgiveupsigns.com, and at that point they had distributed signs in all 50 states and 26 countries in 6 different languages. And besides yard signs, they also offer pencils, postcards, bumper stickers, and wristbands. So this was a while ago that I read this. This was pre-pandemic. And I remember my work team, we purchased some of these. They were business card size of these signs. And we got some pencils. We got some armbands. I think there was a couple other things we got. And we would just randomly walk through the executive building. We call it DAS West. We would walk through and just put some on people's desks. You could do that then because most people came into the office. And we would leave like the little Grand Bar or a little Snickers or something that would say, you matter, don't give up, you are worthy of love. We had so much fun doing it. And so doing that and then reading the article about her, it was very exciting. And the thing that really stuck with me in the article was she said that recently she had gotten a letter from someone in Salem, and he had said to her that he had struggled with depression for years. And one night he went to go get a pizza for his family. And on his way home, he decided to go a different route. And he took a route that as he was driving by, he saw the sign, "Don't give up." And he said he had to pull his car over because he was weeping. And by the time he got home, he was finally able to share with his family what he was struggling with, and they were able to help him to get help. And I know that in the last couple months, I've seen a number of these signs, especially when I drive on Center Street over by the state hospital. I've seen them on my way out to the coast. And you just never know what someone is struggling with and how a word of encouragement or I see you, I recognize you can help them. So I wanted to share this with you all in case you know someone who maybe they're struggling right now, or maybe this is a struggle for you right now. Maybe this is a really hard time for you. So to be able to hear the message that you matter, don't give up. You are worthy of love, and your mistakes do not define you. That it might be that thing that helps them through their day. And with that, it feels kind of like an abrupt change, but is there any questions or anything that anyone would like to share? We actually are done with a lot of time for questions, or if there are thoughts that you think might be helpful to share at this point of the presentation, ideas. Yeah, Joey.
Sorry, my cat's sitting on my camera, so I can't turn it on, but I just wanted to, I'm going to put this in the chat here. There's a local organization called the Joy Team, and they're fantastic, and they do signs like that. You may have seen them on the freeways. And one of the other things that once they take these signs down from the billboards down from the freeways, if you have an event, you can actually either borrow or have some of their billboards. And one of the ones I really love, I have a coffee cup from them, and it says something like, every 10 seconds, someone is like freaking awesome. And right now it's you. And happiness is, it's got all these great sayings. And it's a nonprofit, and the lady is here in Portland. Anyway, I highly recommend you guys check those out, because you've probably seen them, and it was the same concept, but these are bright yellow and you can't miss them, and they're the size of a billboard, and it was really nice to be able to have them locally. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And I love that it's called the Joy Team. That's my word, joy. I love that word. Any other thoughts or questions or comments that could be helpful?
I just want to say you did a great job. I couldn't tell you were nervous at all. And I really, I missed getting those emails for the positivity project. So just throwing that out there. So.
Thank you, Vicki. I appreciate that. Yeah, you never know what might be coming. Stay tuned.
This is Murray again. And
hey, Murray.
Hi, on Facebook, I have this group I follow called Philo Thoughts. And this one came on today, and it's just serendipitous because I think it ties in with what we're talking about. And it's someone named Hugh McKay, and the book is called The Good Life. So what he writes is, I actually attack the concept of happiness. The idea that I don't mind people being happy, but the idea that everything we do is part of the pursuit of happiness seems to me a really dangerous idea, and has led to a contemporary disease in Western society, which is fear of sadness. It's a really odd thing that we're now seeing people saying, write down 3 things that made you happy today before you go to sleep, and cheer up, and happiness is our birthright, and so on. We're kind of teaching our kids that happiness is the default position. It's rubbish. Wholeness is what we ought to be striving for, and part of that is sadness, disappointment, frustration, failure. All of those things which make us who we are. Happiness and victory and fulfillment are nice little things that also happen to us, but they don't teach us much. Everyone says we grow through pain, and then as soon as they experience pain, they say, quick, move on, cheer up. I just like, I'd like just for a year to have a moratorium on the word happiness and to replace it with the word wholeness. Ask yourself, is this contributing to my wholeness? And if you're having a bad day, it is. So I just thought that something that might bring up some conversation.
I love it, Murray. I've heard some of these arguments, and I've heard this idea that why are we spending so much time on happiness? I appreciate that, and I should read it. I believe that we spend a lot of time in the negative. And so how about if we just even try to give equal time to the positive, to finding ways to get back up to that sort of happiness baseline, as the Buddhist monk was mentioning. He was encouraging, feel the depth. I think if you don't know the depth, you don't appreciate the joy. But I understand what that author is saying, and I agree. Right? Too much of a good thing. If you're really truly just telling someone to cheer up, that's just because you want them to be back to the way they were for your benefit, right? That's that toxic positivity that I know I want to avoid, and I certainly don't want people to think that this presentation or that project was trying to promote that. But I like the idea of wholeness.
Almost,
I
yeah.
get that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like
he was
it.
leaning too far the wrong direction, I think. But I like the idea. I like the monk that was talking about having a complete sense of a feeling.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Anyone want to bring it on in the best sense of the word, right? I love these kinds of discussions. Any thoughts about that?
I'll just say, this is Matt, from what you were talking about earlier, the fact that it tends to be the default position to be on the negative side, right? Especially, the day-to-day events that maybe even aren't that big, that cause anxiety and stress and things throughout the day. I think that's why it's, I felt so lucky that we were part of the Positivity Project, the pilot. We got a lot of your attention in our team at the beginning, because it really helped me think about the fact that, why I'm getting through these stressful, negative things are, those people around me that are helping me, right? And focus on that more than the fact that I'm, I feel overwhelmed, right? Letting people know I'm overwhelmed and they can help me instead of just feeling it by myself. And so I do feel like that, that default state needs to be, addressed, as opposed to, that's why, not to take away from the idea of wholeness, but that's why I think we focus on positivity more.
Right, right. Well, and yes, thank you, Matt. And it's great to hear your voice, because it's just fun to see your name pop up. Yeah, you were our pilot project, or our beta group. So I would argue with this gentleman that wholeness also means the good stuff, right? If you want to talk about wholeness, it's not just a whole negative. You have to include all of it. So I'm okay with it. I'll read his book. I'll take him down. No, I'm just kidding. This is serious. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Regina.
Hi, I just want to say I put in the chat that I was thanking Murray for what he brought up. To me, there is a difference between joy and happiness, and that joy is this deeper sense of, like peace and well-being, and wherever you're at, whether you're in pain or sorrow, you can find joy. Happiness to me is more of a circumstance. It's, it's a in one day, out another day, but you could be experiencing, while you can't necessarily experience happiness when you're going through the painful moments and the sorrowful moments and those pieces, I think you can have joy, true joy. It's just a deeper sense. So
Yeah,
I just wanted to share that.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Regina. Sandy, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Lisa. When I was a young wife, I had kind of a mentor provide this quote to me. She said, Sandy, happiness is a decision. It's not a feeling. You have to decide whether or not you're going to be happy regardless of your circumstances. And so that to me over the years has turned into looking to achieve a state of contentment and peace. Very much just like what Regina was talking about. The joy comes from a decision to be joyful regardless of the circumstances and choose to look at things from a peaceful, contented state, which is not always easy. It's quite a balancing act, but I don't go for the giddy happiness. I do shoot for joy on a daily basis.
Yeah. Thank you. You made me realize something else that was in this article. So towards the end, they asked Matthew Ricard, the Buddhist monk, they asked him if he ever gets angry. And he had to stop and think. And he said, oh, there was a time. And so it was a long time ago, but he shared this story where he had just gotten a new laptop. And he was trying to, sort of get himself acquainted with his new laptop. And another monk was walking by carrying a bowl of grain, I don't know, millet or something. And the monk tripped or, sort of caught his foot and spilled some of the grain on the laptop. And Matthew got very angry and said, watch what you're doing. And the other monk looked at him and went, ha, you're angry. Which I just imagine two monks having a conversation and one monk saying, ha, you're angry. But his point was, yeah, he was in that moment. And what good was it going to do him to stay angry or whatever that feeling was he had? So what needed to be done? He wanted to clean off his laptop. He wanted to let the other person know what it was he was working with and, move forward. So it isn't that we have to always be happy, but what's the alternative? How much do we learn and grow, and how really wholehearted can we be if we're stuck or trapped in some of these emotions that don't serve us well? So that's something I'm thinking of too. Okay, I see some things coming in the chat. I'm going to try to manage this. Oh, yes, thank you, Vicki. I'm sorry. If I've kept people over, you are free to leave. I'm just enjoying your questions and your comments. Tim, do you need to do anything to sort of close out the presentation or?
Yeah, we just have a quick slide.
Okay.
And then we do have 10 minutes left. So some folks are just needing to leave to get on to their next engagement or meeting or whatever they have scheduled. And we understand that. So just kind of our finishing slide here, shameless plug for our website, which I just noticed has the wrong link on it. So I will have to get that updated. But I have posted the link to the new website in the chat. So if you're wanting to get onto our Bang site, don't use the one on the slide, use the one in the chat. Our email remains the same. And I believe the PMUG page is still accurate. The link that's on there, PMUG also has regular meetings that you can all plug into. And we are currently trying to work out who our speaker and topic is going to be for October. They just had to postpone on us. So we had to change that real quick on the fly. So join us in October. And I can't tell you right now what the topic's going to be, but please come back and join us in October. And thank you very much, Lisa. This presentation met all of my expectations for how good it was going to be and how enjoyable the interactions were going to be. Just love hearing the Bang community share their shared experiences with each other.
Thank you, Bang community. I hope you invite me back, maybe on a different topic, or maybe we'll all read The Good Life and we'll figure out what it means to be whole. And Ed was asking if October 17th is a Tuesday. According to my calendar, it is. Is that right, yep. Tim? Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
All right, everyone.
We're currently on a schedule of alternating Tuesdays and Thursdays. So
okay,
that's why.
All right. I'm going to sign off. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Lisa.